Untold Fears, Highway Patrol, Horror Stories, Story. 1. The Phantom Hitchhiker. My name is Officer Daniel Rourke, and I've been patrolling Highway 41 for 11 years. 11 years of drunk drivers, drug runs, and domestic calls that spill out onto the asphalt at 2 in the morning. My ex-wife used to say, I married the road, not her. Maybe she was right. After the divorce, the night shifts became my refuge. Just me, the highway, and the endless white lines disappearing under my headlights. It was October 17th when everything changed. 2:34 a.m. I remember because I just logged a speeding citation and was heading back north toward the county line. The fog that night was thick, the kind that doesn't just obscure vision, but seems to muffle sound, making the world feel smaller, suffocating. My wipers were on intermittent, smearing moisture across the windshield in rhythmic arcs. The radio crackled with static between dispatch calls, and the heater blew stale air that smelled faintly of old coffee and the pine air freshener dangling from my rearview mirror. The stretch of 41. I was on cuts through dense forest, miles of nothing but Douglas fir and cedar pressing in from both sides. No houses, no gas stations, just asphalt and trees and darkness so complete it feels like the world ends 20 feet from your bumper. That's when I saw her. A figure on the shoulder, thumb out, long dark hair hanging over her face. She wore what looked like a white dress, thin fabric that seemed to catch every bit of ambient light. My first thought was hypothermia. It was 38 degrees, and she wasn't wearing a jacket. I hit my lights and pulled over, gravel crunching under my tires. Through the passenger window, I could see her more clearly. Young, maybe mid-20s, barefoot on the cold asphalt. Her skin was pale, almost luminescent in the fog. "Ma'am?" I called out through the window. "You need help?" She didn't respond, just walked toward the car with this odd, gliding motion. No expression on her face. My hand instinctively moved to my radio, but something stopped me. She looked lost, vulnerable. I unlocked the back door. "Get in. It's freezing out there." She slid into the back seat without a word. I adjusted my mirror to see her, and she was staring straight ahead, hands folded in her lap. Water dripped from her hair onto the seat, forming small puddles. "Where you headed?" I asked, pulling back onto the highway. Silence. "Miss, I need to know where to take you. You got family nearby?" Nothing, just that blank stare. The temperature in the car seemed to drop. I cranked the heat, but it didn't help. My breath started fogging in front of me, and the smell, God, the smell changed, like wet earth and decay, like something that had been buried and dug up. I glanced in the mirror again. The back seat was empty. I slammed on the brakes, fishtailing slightly before coming to a stop in the middle of the highway. My heart hammered against my ribs. I twisted around, shining my flashlight into the back. The seat was soaked, not just damp, but drenched, water pooling on the floor mat. But no girl, no hitchhiker. "Control, this is Unit 23, I said into my radio, my voice shakier than I wanted. I need to report something unusual. If you're new here, subscribe to Untold Fears for nightly stories that make you question every sound on the road." The dispatcher's voice crackled back. "Go ahead, 23. But what was I going to say? That I'd picked up a ghost? I could already hear the jokes in the break room. "Nothing. False alarm." I didn't go home that night. Instead, I drove to Ruby's Diner, the only place open past midnight. Ruby herself was behind the counter, a woman in her 60s with gray hair pulled into a tight bun and eyes that had seen too much. "Coffee?" I said, sliding onto a stool. She poured without asking questions, but she was looking at me funny. "You look like you've seen something, Officer Rourke." "Just tired." "You were on 41 tonight, weren't you? Near mile marker 89? My cup stopped halfway to my mouth. "How'd you know?" Ruby leaned in, lowering her voice even though we were the only ones there. "You picked someone up, a girl in a white dress." The coffee turned to acid in my stomach. "How could you possibly?" "Because you're not the first. Been happening for 30 years, ever since Sarah Kellerman died on that stretch. Prom night, 1992. Her date was driving drunk, crashed into a tree. She was thrown from the car, died on impact. They say she's still trying to get home." "That's just a story." "Is it?" Ruby nodded toward my uniform. "Check your shoulder." I looked down. My right shoulder was soaking wet, and there was a muddy handprint, small, delicate fingers pressed into the fabric. Over the next 3 weeks, I tried to rationalize it. Condensation, a prank, sleep deprivation. But I couldn't explain the handprint or the water or the smell that lingered in my patrol car, no matter how many times I cleaned it. Then, on November 3rd, I was back on 41. Same stretch, same fog. And there she was again. This time, I didn't stop. I gripped the wheel and pressed the accelerator, determined to pass her by. But as I drew level with her position, my car lurched like something had grabbed the bumper. The steering wheel jerked left, pulling me toward the shoulder, toward the trees. I fought it, muscles straining, and managed to straighten out. When I looked in the mirror, she was standing in the middle of the highway, facing me. Her mouth opened impossibly wide, and a sound came out, not a scream, but a low, mournful wail that seemed to vibrate through the car frame, through my bones. Then she was gone. I requested a transfer the next day. They gave it to me, no questions asked. Turns out I wasn't the only officer who'd requested off Highway 41. The sergeant just nodded and handed me new patrol routes. But here's the thing. Last week I was driving to visit my daughter in Bellingham. Took a shortcut I didn't recognize, and suddenly I was on a dark tree-lined road with fog rolling in. The GPS said I was 40 miles from 41, but when I glanced in my rearview mirror, there she was in the back seat, water dripping from her hair, mud streaking her white dress. And she was smiling. I don't know what she wants. I don't know if she'll ever leave me alone, but I keep my doors locked now, even when I'm driving. Especially when I'm driving, because the thing about Highway 41, about that phantom hitchhiker, is that once she gets in your car, you never really leave that road. You just keep driving, and she's always there, just behind you, waiting. But just 20 miles north, another officer met something far worse. Story 2. The Ghost Car. My name is Sergeant Marcus Webb, and I need to tell you about the night I pulled over a car that didn't exist. I've been with the State Patrol for 16 years, seen crashes that turned vehicles into twisted metal sculptures, chased down gang members doing 90 through school zones, talked jumpers off overpasses. I thought I'd seen everything the night could throw at me. I was wrong. It started on a Tuesday, November 14th. I was working graveyard on Interstate 90, the stretch that runs through the Cascade foothills. The kind of night where the temperature drops below freezing and black ice forms in patches you can't see until you're sliding. The dispatcher had already logged 4 accidents, and I was running on my 3rd energy drink and maybe 2 hours of sleep. Around 3:15 a.m., I was sitting in my usual spot, a turnout near exit 62 where speeders come flying over the hill. Most of my paycheck gets justified in that exact spot. The cab was warm, almost too warm, and I had the radio turned low, Merle Haggard singing about Mama Tried. My radar gun rested on the passenger seat, aimed at the westbound lanes. That's when I saw it. A 1970s sedan looked like a Plymouth Fury, maybe a Dodge Polara, doing at least 95 in a 65. No headlights. Just the silhouette visible against the ambient glow from distant city lights. It blew past my position, and I immediately fired up my lights and siren. "Control, this is Unit 47. I'm in pursuit of a speeding vehicle, westbound I-90, near mile marker 62. Vehicle is dark-colored sedan, no plates visible, no headlights, heading west at high speed." "Copy, 47. Backup is 20 minutes out. Proceed with caution." 20 minutes. I'd have this guy pulled over and cited in 5. I punched the accelerator, and my cruiser surged forward. The sedan was fast, faster than it should have been for a car that old. I was pushing 90 and barely gaining. The fog was patchy here, and I kept losing visual on the vehicle, catching glimpses of its taillights, which were the wrong color, more amber than red, before it disappeared again. My headlights caught something else. The sedan's rear window. There was a figure in the driver's seat, but I couldn't make out details. Just a shape, motionless, even as the car weaved slightly between lanes. "Vehicle failing to yield," I reported. Continuing pursuit. The sedan suddenly braked. No brake lights, just a rapid deceleration that caught me off guard. I had to swerve into the left lane to avoid rear-ending it. Then it pulled onto the shoulder and stopped. If you're new here, subscribe to Untold Fears for nightly stories that make you question every sound on the road. I positioned my cruiser behind it, angling slightly to the left for safety, and hit my spotlight. The beam illuminated the back of the sedan, and that's when I noticed the first wrong detail. The license plate was there, but the numbers and letters were backward, like I was seeing them in a mirror. "Control, vehicle has stopped, running plate now." I keyed in what I thought I saw, 7G4K29. The system came back instantly. No record found. I tried again, reversing the sequence. Still nothing. Protocol said to wait for backup, but I could see the driver's silhouette. Single occupant, not moving. I grabbed my flashlight and stepped out into the cold. The wind had picked up, carrying the smell of pine and that particular ozone scent that comes before a storm. My breath plumed in front of me. "Driver, keep your hands visible," I called out, approaching from the rear quarter panel. No response. The engine was running. I could hear it, a deep rumble that sounded wrong, off-tempo, like a heartbeat with an arrhythmia. But there was no exhaust coming from the tailpipe, no condensation in the freezing air. I came up alongside the driver's window and shined my light inside. The car was empty. Not just empty, there was no steering wheel, no dashboard, no seats, just an hollow shell, and through the windshield I could see straight through to the road ahead. The interior was coated in something dark and wet that reflected my flashlight beam. It looked like oil, but it moved, dripping upward along the doors, defying gravity. My radio crackled. "Unit 47, dispatch. Backup is en route. What's your status?" I couldn't answer. I was frozen, watching as the substance inside the car began to form shapes, handprints pressing against the windows from the inside, dozens of them, small hands like children's. They left smears as they moved, and I could hear, God help me, I could hear crying, soft, distant, like it was coming from very far away. Then the engine revved, once, twice. The whole car shuddered, and the driver's door flew open, slamming into my legs and knocking me backward. I hit the ground hard, my flashlight skittering across the asphalt. The sedan's taillights flared bright, impossibly bright, burning, amber like warning flares. Then it shot forward, accelerating from a standstill to what must have been over 100 in seconds. I scrambled to my feet, watching it disappear into the fog. But here's what made me request a psych eval the next day. As the car vanished, I saw something in my peripheral vision. On the shoulder where it had been parked, there were flowers. Fresh flowers laid out in the shape of a cross with a small wooden marker that read, "In memory of the Dalton family, 1979. I radioed it in. Backup arrived, found me sitting on the hood of my cruiser, shaking. They searched the area. No flowers, no marker, just skid marks that, according to the traffic specialist, were consistent with a vehicle from the late 1970s. Back at the station, I did my own research. Stayed late, went through old accident reports. And I found it. December 3rd, 1979. The Dalton family, mother, father, 2 daughters aged 6 and 9, driving home from a Thanksgiving visit. Their car, a 1977 Plymouth Fury, was struck by a drunk driver on I-90 near mile marker 62. All four died instantly. The drunk driver fled the scene and was never caught. The case was never solved. The Fury was totaled, crushed into scrap. But apparently it's still out there, still driving, still trying to make it home. I saw it again last month, same stretch of road, same time of night. This time I didn't pursue. I pulled over, turned off my lights, and watched it pass. As it went by, I caught a glimpse through the windows, shadows in the seats. 4 of them. A family? And the little girl in the back seat turned to look at me. Her eyes were hollow and her mouth moved, forming words I couldn't hear. But I read her lips. Help us. I can't help them. I don't know how. And every time I work that stretch of I-90, I wonder if tonight will be the night that car stops for good, and what it will do when it does. But the highway holds darker secrets still, as one woman discovered when she tried to help a stranger. Story 3. The Woman Waving for Help. My name is Janet Cordova, and I'm a long-haul trucker. 16 years behind the wheel, hauling everything from lumber to refrigerated produce across the Pacific Northwest. I chose this life because I like the solitude. After my son died, hit by a drunk driver when he was 15, I couldn't stand being home, couldn't stand the silence that filled his empty room. So I drive, and I don't think too much. Highway 101 is my regular route, running along the coast from Portland to Eureka. Beautiful during the day, ocean on one side, forest on the other. At night, it's a different animal. The fog rolls in from the Pacific, thick as cotton, and the road twists through sections where cell service drops to nothing, and you're truly alone. It was February 23rd, Thursday night, around 11:30 p.m. I was northbound, hauling a load of canned goods, making decent time despite the weather. The fog was heavy, reducing visibility to maybe 50 feet. My CB was quiet, not unusual for that stretch, and I had a podcast playing, some true crime thing about disappearances in national parks. Then I saw her, a woman standing on the shoulder, waving both arms frantically. She was illuminated in my headlights for just a moment, long brown hair, wearing what looked like a jogging outfit, white sneakers. She looked desperate, terrified. I don't usually stop. Rule number 1 of long-haul trucking: don't stop for anyone, especially not at night on deserted roads. But something about her, the way she was waving, the genuine panic on her face, made me hit the air brakes. The rig hissed and groaned as I pulled onto the shoulder. I grabbed my flashlight and my tire iron, I'm not stupid, and climbed down from the cab. The ocean air hit me immediately, cold and damp, carrying the smell of salt and kelp. The fog was so thick I could barely see the front of my own truck. "Ma'am," I called out, "you need help?" No answer. I walked back along the shoulder, flashlight cutting through the murk. She'd been right here, no more than 20 yards behind where I'd stopped, but there was nothing. No woman, no car broken down, nothing but the empty highway and the sound of waves crashing against rocks somewhere below. "Hello?" My voice sounded small, swallowed by the fog. A sound behind me made me spin around. Footsteps on gravel. Running footsteps. I swung the flashlight beam and caught movement, a figure darting across the highway, vanishing into the fog on the other side. "Wait, are you hurt?" I don't know why I followed her. Every instinct screamed to get back in my truck and go. But I thought about my son, about how someone had driven past him lying on that roadside, how no one stopped to help. I couldn't do that. I couldn't be that person. I crossed the highway, flashlight beam jerking with each step. On the far side, there was a guardrail, and beyond it, a steep embankment dropping toward the ocean. A trail, barely visible, led down through the brush. "Ma'am, please, I want to help." If you're new here, subscribe to Untold Fears for nightly stories that make you question every sound on the road. More footsteps further down the trail. I could hear her breathing, ragged and panicked. I started down, my boots slipping on wet earth and dead leaves. The sound of the ocean grew louder. The fog here was even thicker, and my flashlight barely penetrated 5 feet. The trail opened onto a small beach, black sand and tide pools and rocks jutting up like broken teeth. And there she was, standing at the water's edge, her back to me. "Ma'am, are you okay?" She didn't turn around, didn't move at all, just stood there, arms at her sides, waves lapping at her feet. I walked closer, my hand gripping the tire iron tighter. Something was wrong. The smell hit me, not salt water, but something rotten, organic decay. "Ma'am?" She turned. Her face. God, her face. It wasn't right. The features were melting, sliding down like wax, revealing something beneath. Bone and darkness and eyes that weren't eyes, just hollow sockets that somehow still saw me. Her mouth opened, impossibly wide, and a sound came out, not words, but a shriek that pierced straight through my skull. I ran, dropped the flashlight and the tire iron, and just ran, scrambling back up the embankment, branches tearing at my face and jacket. I could hear her behind me. No, not behind me, beside me, the sound moving through the fog, circling me. I burst back onto the highway and sprinted for my truck. The door seemed miles away. My lungs burned. Behind me, that shrieking continued, rising and falling like a siren. I hauled myself into the cab and slammed the door, fumbling with the locks. Through the windshield I could see her, standing in the middle of the highway now, lit by my headlights. But she wasn't alone. There were others, dozens of figures, all facing my truck, all with that same melting wax face, all shrieking in unison. I threw the truck into gear and punched the accelerator. The rig lurched forward, and I drove straight through the crowd. I felt no impact. They simply vanished as I passed through them, like smoke. I drove for 2 hours without stopping, shaking so hard I could barely hold the wheel. At a truck stop in Coos Bay, I finally pulled over. My hands were bleeding. I'd been gripping the wheel so tight, my nails had cut into my palms. The next day, I told myself it was exhaustion, hallucination brought on by fatigue and too many energy drinks. But when I inspected my truck, I found something lodged in my grill, a waterlogged running shoe. White, women's size 7, covered in kelp and sand, and something that might have been algae or might have been decomposed flesh. I looked up the history of that stretch of Highway 101, found an article from 1998. A woman named Catherine Price had gone jogging along that route and disappeared. Her car was found on the shoulder, keys still in the ignition, phone on the passenger seat. Massive search. No body ever recovered. The official theory was that she'd fallen from the trail and been swept out to sea. But the article included a detail that made my blood freeze. Catherine was wearing a white jogging suit and white Nike running shoes. I don't take Highway 101 anymore. I reroute through inland roads, adding 3 hours to my trips. My dispatcher thinks I'm crazy. My ex-husband says I need therapy. Maybe they're right. But last week, I was driving through Portland, stopped at a red light. I glanced in my side mirror, and there she was, standing on the sidewalk, arms raised, waving at me, waving frantically, her face perfect and normal and desperate. The light turned green. I didn't move. Cars honked behind me, drivers yelling. I just sat there, staring at her reflection, until someone drove around me and passed directly through her. She's still out there, still looking for help, still trying to get someone to follow her down to that beach. And I think, God, I think that everyone she's lured down there is with her now. All of them standing in the fog, waiting for the next driver who's too kind, too compassionate to ignore someone in need. I learned something that night. Sometimes the person waving for help isn't the victim. Sometimes they're the trap. But at least she could see what was chasing her. The next driver wasn't so lucky. Story 4. The Truck with No Driver. My name is Ray Donnelly, and I drive a tow truck for Cascade Recovery Services. Been doing it for 9 years. It's not glamorous work. You're out in all weather, dealing with people on the worst day of their lives, scraping metal off highways and pulling cars out of ditches. But it's honest work, and after my second DUI nearly cost me everything, I needed something steady. The night of January 8th started normal enough. I was on call, parked in the lot behind Lou's garage, waiting for my radio to squawk. Temperature was in the 20s, and a light snow had started falling around 10 p.m. My truck's cab smelled like old coffee and the meatball sub I'd had for dinner. The police scanner crackled with routine traffic stops and domestic disturbances. At 11:47 p.m., the call came in. "Ray, you there?" It was dispatch, Maggie, who'd been working the night shift since before I was hired. "Yeah, Mag, what's up?" "Got a weird one. State Patrol called in a report of a semi blocking both lanes on Route 26, mile marker 112. No driver on scene. They need it cleared ASAP." "No driver? What, he just abandoned it?" "That's what they said. Trooper on scene said it's running, but nobody's inside. Can you handle it?" "On my way." Route 26 runs east from Portland into the mountain passes. At night, especially in winter, it's treacherous. Steep grades, tight curves, and weather that can turn deadly without warning. Mile marker 112 is particularly nasty, a section where the road cuts along a cliff face with a sheer drop on one side. I made good time, and I spotted the flashing blue lights from a half-mile out. The State Patrol had set up flares, and a single cruiser sat with its light bar going. The semi was a big rig, 53-foot trailer, marked with the logo of a freight company I didn't recognize. It was jackknifed across both lanes, engine running, headlights on. I pulled up and climbed out. The trooper approached. Young guy, maybe late 20s. Name tag read Miller. "You the tow?" he asked. "That's me." "What's the situation?" Miller gestured to the truck. "Found it like this about 30 minutes ago. Engine running, no driver, no signs of struggle." Walked the area, no footprints leading away, nothing. It's like the guy just vanished. Maybe he went to find a phone? In this weather, and why leave the engine running? Good point. I walked closer to the semi, my boots crunching on fresh snow. The truck was a Peterbilt, late model, well-maintained. The engine had that deep idle of a big diesel, exhaust pipes pumping white vapor into the cold air. I shined my flashlight into the cab. Empty. Driver's seat vacant. But the weird part, there was a cup of coffee in the holder, still steaming, and the CB radio was on, hissing static. "You try the CB?" I asked Miller. "Yeah. Got nothing but dead air." I climbed up onto the runner and opened the driver's door. The interior was immaculate. No trash, no personal items, nothing. Just that coffee cup and the keys in the ignition. I turned off the engine, and sudden silence fell over the scene, broken only by the wind and the ticking of cooling metal. Then the CB crackled to life. "Help?" Miller and I both froze. The voice was faint, buried under layers of static, barely audible. "Hello." I grabbed the mic. "This is Cascade Recovery. Who's this?" "Help. Marker 112. Can't stop." "We're at 112. Where are you?" It won't let me stop. If you're new here, subscribe to Untold Fears for nightly stories that make you question every sound on the road. The voice cut out. I tried again, but got nothing. Miller was on his radio, calling it in, requesting backup and additional units to search the area. "I'll hook it up," I said. "Get it off the road at least." It took me 20 minutes to rig the tow lines and get the semi's wheels unlocked. The whole time I had this feeling, like I was being watched. I kept glancing at the cliff edge, expecting to see someone standing there, but it was just darkness and falling snow. I climbed into my tow truck, engaged the lift, and started pulling the semi onto the shoulder. That's when I looked in my side mirror and saw it. The semi's cab, the one I'd just cleared out, the one with no driver, had someone in it. A figure sitting in the driver's seat, hands on the wheel, staring straight ahead. I slammed on my brakes. The tow rig jerked to a stop, and I jumped out, running back to the semi. I yanked open the driver's door. Empty. "Miller!" I shouted. "Did you see that?" The trooper jogged over. "See what?" There was someone in the cab. I saw him in my mirror. Miller shined his flashlight inside. Nothing. "Ray, there's nobody." The engine started. We both jumped back. The semi's diesel roared to life on its own. No key in the ignition. I'd removed it and put it in my pocket. The headlights flared bright, and the horn blasted once, twice, 3 times. What the hell? Miller reached for his sidearm. The transmission engaged with a grinding clunk, and the semi lurched forward, my tow cables snapping like thread. It accelerated, wheels spinning in the snow, heading back onto the highway. We watched, stunned, as it gained speed. 50, 60, 70 miles per hour, barreling down Route 26 with no driver visible through the windshield. "Control! We have a runaway semi!" Miller was screaming into his radio. "No driver, heading east on 26. Set up a roadblock." We jumped into our vehicles and gave chase. My tow truck isn't made for speed, but I pushed it hard, Miller's cruiser ahead of me, lights and sirens blaring. The semi was a quarter-mile ahead, moving fast, too fast for the conditions. We came around a bend, and I saw it happen. The semi swerved suddenly, violently, like invisible hands had jerked the wheel. It crashed through the guardrail and went over the cliff edge, disappearing into the darkness. A moment later, the sound of impact, metal grinding on rock, then silence. Miller and I skidded to a stop. We ran to the broken guardrail and looked down. The semi was 100 feet below, wrapped around a boulder, cab crushed, trailer crumpled. Fire had already started, flames licking at the diesel tanks. "There's no way anyone survived that," Miller whispered. We radioed it in. Fire crews arrived within 20 minutes, but the fire was too intense to approach. They let it burn. At dawn, when they finally got close enough to search the wreckage, they found something that made no sense. There was no body in the cab, no remains, no evidence anyone had been in the truck at all. But they did find something else. Burned into the dashboard, like someone had carved it with a welding torch, was a message. Mile marker 112, 2007. I looked it up later. In 2007, there was an accident on Route 26 at mile marker 112. A semi-driver named Jack Holloway lost control on black ice, went through the guardrail, and fell to his death. His last words over the CB were, "I can't stop. The brakes won't." The accident report noted that investigators never figured out why his brakes failed. They'd been inspected days before and were in perfect condition. I quit Cascade Recovery 3 weeks later, took a job doing apartment maintenance, something that keeps me off the highways. But sometimes, late at night, my old CB radio, which I keep in my garage, unplugged, will crackle to life, and I'll hear that voice, "Help, marker 112, can't stop." He's still out there, still trying to brake, still dying over and over again. And if you're ever on Route 26 near mile marker 112 and you see a semi coming up fast behind you with no one in the cab, don't stop. Don't try to help. Just drive. But some highway horrors don't need a vehicle at all. Sometimes they speak directly into your radio. Story 5. The Haunted Patrol Car Radio. My name is Officer Lisa Chen, and I've been with the Washington State Patrol for 7 years. I chose this career because my father was a trooper, 25 years on the force, retired with honors. He taught me that the job was about service, about being the calm in someone else's storm. I believed that. I still want to believe it. But after what happened in my patrol car last November, I'm not sure what I believe anymore. I was assigned Unit 34, a 2021 Dodge Charger with about 60,000 miles on it. Standard patrol vehicle, light bar, laptop mount, rifle rack in the trunk. The only thing unusual about it was its history. 3 different troopers had requested transfers out of Unit 34 in the past 2 years. The official reason was always vague, personal preference or equipment issues. But there were rumors, whispers in the break room about strange radio problems, voices that shouldn't be there. I figured it was hazing, the kind of ghost stories veterans tell rookies to spook them. I requested Unit 34 just to prove I wasn't scared. That was a mistake. November 12th, I was working graveyard shift, 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., patrolling I-5 through King County. It was a slow night, few cars on the road, just the occasional semi hauling freight south toward Portland. The temperature had dropped, and frost was forming on the overpasses. Around 1:30 a.m., I was parked in a rest area, catching up on paperwork. The radio was set to the usual frequency, district dispatch, and it was quiet except for occasional check-ins from other units. Then I heard it. A child's voice, faint under the static. "Mommy?" I looked up from my laptop. The radio was definitely where it had come from. I keyed the mic. "Dispatch, did you just transmit something? I'm hearing interference." "Negative, Unit 34. We're clear on our end." I went back to my reports. 5 minutes later, the voice came again, louder this time. "Mommy, where are you?" The voice was wrong. Not just the fact that a child was on a police frequency, which should have been impossible, but the quality of it. It sounded old, like a recording from decades ago, with that particular tinny echo of analog tape. "Dispatch, I'm definitely getting some kind of cross-traffic. Maybe a CB bleed over?" "Unit 34, we're not showing any interference. Try switching to Channel 2. I switched channels. Silence for a moment. Then, "Mommy, it's cold." My skin prickled. I grabbed the radio handset. "Who is this? Identify yourself." "Mommy, please, I can't find you." "This is State Patrol. This frequency is for official use only. Clear the channel." "He hurt me, Mommy. Why did you let him hurt me?" The voice broke into static, and I heard something underneath it, crying, sobbing. And another sound, distant, like metal scraping concrete. I switched off the radio completely. My heart was hammering. In the sudden silence, I could hear my own breathing, rapid and shallow. I sat there for 10 minutes, trying to rationalize what I'd heard. Radio malfunction, some sick prank, anything but what my instincts were screaming. Finally, I turned the radio back on. Immediately, the voice. "He's coming again. Mommy, don't let him take me." A scream, high-pitched, terrified, cut off abruptly. Then a different voice. Adult, male, low and rough. "She won't help you. Nobody will." If you're new here, subscribe to Untold Fears for nightly stories that make you question every sound on the road. I dropped the handset like it was burning. My hand went to my sidearm, stupid, irrational, but every instinct screamed danger. The radio continued, that male voice now speaking in a steady monotone. "Unit 34, you're listening. Good, you need to understand. This car, this road. She died here, the girl, Emma Pritchard, died in the back seat. November 12th, 20 years ago tonight. November 12th. Today's date." "Who is this?" I demanded. "How are you accessing this frequency?" She was 7. Her stepfather beat her to death. Right here. This rest area. Then he dumped her body in the woods, drove away like nothing happened. I'm tracing this transmission. "You can't trace the dead, Officer Chen." He knew my name. Her mother was a dispatcher, working tonight. Heard the whole thing on the radio, her daughter's screams. But by the time units arrived, it was too late. I grabbed my phone and Googled Emma Pritchard, Washington State. The results came up immediately. News articles from 2003. 7-year-old found dead in rest area woods. Stepfather arrested in girl's death. And the detail that made my blood freeze. Victim's mother was police dispatcher. "She's been trying to reach her mother ever since," the voice continued. 20 years, every November 12th, calling out over these radios, but her mother quit. Couldn't work after what happened. Couldn't listen to these frequencies, so Emma just keeps calling, keeps waiting. "This isn't real," I said aloud. "This is someone hacking the radio." "Look in your back seat." I didn't want to. Every fiber of my being screamed not to turn around. But I did. In the back seat, in the prisoner cage, sat a little girl. Blonde hair matted with blood, wearing pajamas with cartoon characters. Her eyes were hollow, dark pits, and her mouth moved, forming words I couldn't hear. "Mommy." I threw open my door and stumbled out of the car, gasping. The cold air hit me like a slap. I backed away from Unit 34, hand on my gun, rational thought gone. I pulled out my phone and called dispatch directly, bypassing the radio. "This is Chen, Unit 34. I need immediate backup at the southbound I-5 rest area, mile marker 142. Possible?" "What? Possible ghost?" "Possible intruder in my vehicle." 3 units arrived within 15 minutes. They searched Unit 34 thoroughly. Empty. No sign anyone had been in the back seat. No fingerprints, no disturbances. The radio was fine, functioning normally. The watch commander suggested I take the rest of the night off. Said I probably needed sleep. I didn't argue. But I did my own research. Dug into the Emma Pritchard case. Found her mother's name. Linda Pritchard. She'd worked for King County Dispatch from 1998 to 2003, quit the day after her daughter's body was found. I found an old address, drove there the next day. The house was abandoned, foreclosed. Neighbors said Linda had lived there until about 5 years ago, became a recluse, never left the house. One day, emergency services were called. She died of what the coroner ruled was natural causes, but the neighbor who found her said Linda was sitting at a table with an old police radio, wearing a headset, like she was waiting for a call. I requested transfer out of Unit 34. They granted it. But here's the thing. It didn't matter. Last week I was in Unit 52, completely different car, different radio system. I was on patrol, alone on I-5 at 2 a.m., and I heard it again. "Officer Chen." That same child's voice. "She knows you listened. She wants you to know. Thank you for listening." The voice faded into static, and I realized it wasn't about the car. It wasn't about the radio. Emma Pritchard's voice is in the frequency itself, embedded in the electromagnetic spectrum, calling out forever. And now that I've heard her, really heard her, she won't let me go. Every shift, I hear her. Sometimes just a whisper, sometimes full conversations, describing what her stepfather did, begging for her mother. The other troopers don't hear it. It's just me. I'm thinking about quitting, finding a different career, something that doesn't require a radio. But I'm afraid that even if I do, I'll still hear her. When I turn on my car radio, when I walk past a CB in a truck stop, when someone nearby plays audio through a speaker, because some frequencies, once you're tuned in, you can never shut off. But if you think voices on the radio are terrifying, imagine arriving at an accident where the victims simply don't exist. Story 6. The Accident with No Victims. My name is Deputy Frank Mahoney, and I've been with the Humboldt County Sheriff's Department for 12 years. I've worked fatal accidents, too many of them. I've seen what happens when a car hits a tree at 90 miles per hour, when a drunk driver crosses the center line, when someone decides not to wear a seatbelt. I've held the hands of dying people and delivered death notifications to families. I thought I was immune to being surprised. Then I worked the accident on Old Mill Road. March 3rd, Saturday night, around 9:40 p.m. I was on patrol in the southern part of the county, mostly farmland and forest, when the call came over the radio. "All units, we have a report of a single vehicle accident on Old Mill Road, approximately 2 miles east of Route 36. Caller reports vehicle left the roadway and struck a tree. Possible injuries." "Unit 19 responding," I radioed back. ETA 10 minutes. Old Mill Road is a narrow two-lane that winds through redwood forest. No streetlights, no houses, just trees so tall and dense they blot out the sky. Cell service is spotty at best, the kind of road where, if something goes wrong, you're on your own for a while. I made good time and I spotted the accident easily, a sedan off the right shoulder wrapped around a massive redwood. The front end was accordioned, hood crumpled, windshield shattered. My headlights reflected off the deployed airbags. I pulled over and radioed it in. Unit 19 on scene. Single vehicle, major damage, checking for occupants. I grabbed my flashlight and first aid kit and approached the vehicle. It was a Honda Civic, maybe 5 years old, Oregon plates. The driver's door was ajar, hanging on one hinge. I shined my light inside. Empty. No driver. No passengers. But the airbags were deployed, and there was blood, a lot of it, on the steering wheel, dashboard, and windshield. The car's interior smelled like burned rubber and that copper tang of fresh blood. "Hello?" I called out. "Anyone here? This is the sheriff's department." Nothing. I walked the perimeter of the accident, searching the brush with my flashlight. Sometimes people wander off after a crash, disoriented, suffering from head trauma. But I found no trail, no broken branches, no footprints in the soft earth. I returned to the car and looked closer. The blood was still wet, glistening. I touched it. Warm. This accident was recent, maybe within the last 10 minutes. But where was the driver? I checked the registration in the glove box. Vehicle registered to a Michael Doss, address in Eugene, Oregon. I radioed it in, requested an ambulance and a tow truck, and started a more thorough search of the area. That's when I found the first strange detail. A cell phone lying in the dirt about 15 feet from the car. Screen cracked but still powered on. I picked it up and it unlocked. No password. The last activity was a call made at 9:38 p.m., just before I'd gotten the dispatch call. I listened to the voicemail. "Dad, it's me. I think I'm lost. I took a wrong turn, and now I'm on this road, and I don't know where I am. There's something, Dad, there's something wrong with this road. I keep seeing." The message cut off with a sound like static, then silence. If you're new here, subscribe to Untold Fears for nightly stories that make you question every sound on the road. I played it again, listening carefully. In the background, beneath Michael Doss's voice, there was another sound, rhythmic, like footsteps, or breathing. The ambulance arrived, followed by the tow truck and another deputy unit. We searched the area thoroughly, 50 yards in every direction. No body, no blood trail, no sign of where Michael Doss had gone. "Maybe he wandered off and collapsed somewhere," Deputy Torres suggested. "Head injury, didn't know what. He was doing." "Then where's the trail? There should be disturbed vegetation, blood drops, something." We brought in search and rescue. They arrived at midnight with dogs. The dogs tracked a scent from the car about 20 yards into the woods, then stopped, circling in confusion. The handlers said it was like the scent just ended, like whoever they were tracking had vanished into thin air. By dawn, we had state police helping, a helicopter with thermal imaging, volunteers from town. Dozens of people combing the forest. Nothing. Michael Doss had simply disappeared. I stayed on scene, documenting everything, taking photographs. That's when I noticed something odd about the blood in the car. There was a lot of it, suggesting serious injury, but it was distributed wrong. It wasn't splattered the way blood spreads in an impact. It was smeared, like someone had deliberately painted it onto the surfaces. And there was a pattern. On the dashboard, the blood formed letters. Help. "Torres, look at this." He leaned in. "Jesus, did the Vic write that?" "Maybe, but look at the position. The steering wheel's in the way. You'd have to be in the passenger seat to reach that angle." "So there was a passenger?" "Not according to the registration, and there's only one deployed airbag." I took samples of the blood, sent them to the state crime lab with a rush request. The results came back 3 days later. The blood was human, type O positive, but there was something wrong with it. The lab tech said it was degraded, showing signs of decomposition. Not fresh blood at all, but blood that had been dead for weeks. That didn't make sense. I'd seen it. I'd touched it. It was wet and warm. I started digging into the history of Old Mill Road. Turns out, it has a history. In 1987, a family of 4 disappeared while driving that stretch. Car found abandoned. No signs of struggle. No bodies ever recovered. In 1995, a solo driver vanished under similar circumstances. In 2003, 2 teenagers disappeared after their car was found wrecked against a tree on Old Mill Road. Same tree. The exact same redwood where Michael Doss's car had crashed. I went back to the scene alone, off-duty, bringing a camera and voice recorder. It was late afternoon, golden light filtering through the redwoods. The car had been towed away, but the tree remained, scarred with paint transfer and dents from multiple impacts. I walked around it, examining the trunk. That's when I saw them. Names carved into the bark. Dozens of names, some old and weathered, some more recent. I recognized several from my research, the missing drivers and passengers from those cold cases. And at the bottom, freshly carved, still weeping sap, Michael Doss. I took photographs, my hands shaking. I ran my fingers over the letters. They were deep, cut with something sharp. But Michael Doss's car hadn't had any tools in it. No knife, no blade. He can't leave. I spun around. An old man stood on the road, leaning on a cane. White hair, weathered face, wearing a flannel jacket. I hadn't heard him approach. "Excuse me?" "The tree. It doesn't let them leave. Been taking people since before I was born. My grandfather told me stories. Said it was here before the loggers came, before the road. Said the local tribes wouldn't go near it. Called it the Standing Hunger." "Sir, I'm Deputy Mahoney. Did you witness the accident here?" "Don't need to witness it. Happens the same way every time. They crash. They bleed. They carve their names. Then they walk into the tree." "Walk into the tree?" The old man pointed with his cane. I looked at the redwood. The bark was rough, fissured with deep cracks and crevices. And in the center, at about chest height, there was an opening. Not large, maybe 2 feet across, but deep, dark, like a wound in the wood. "You shine a light in there, you'll see," the old man said. "All of them? Still there." I approached the opening, pulled out my flashlight, and shined it inside. The tree was hollow, and inside I saw them, people, dozens of people, standing motionless, pressed together, faces pale, eyes open but unseeing. Some were wearing old-fashioned clothes from decades ago. Others were in modern attire. And there, at the front, still wearing the torn shirt and bloodied face from his accident, was Michael Doss. I stumbled backward, dropping my flashlight. It rolled into the hollow, the beam illuminating those faces, those empty eyes. And Michael Doss's eyes moved. They tracked me. His mouth opened. "Help!" I ran, got in my cruiser, and drove back to town, doing 80. I wrote up a report, mentioned the carved names, but nothing else. I couldn't. Who would believe me? The county eventually declared Michael Doss missing, presumed dead. His family held a memorial service. The case went cold, but I know where he is, where they all are. And last week I was driving past Old Mill Road. I avoid it now, take detours to stay away, and I saw a new car pulled over on the shoulder. A woman standing next to it, looking lost, holding her phone. I slowed down, intending to help. But then I saw where she was standing, right next to that tree. She looked at me, and her eyes were empty, and she smiled and waved, gesturing for me to pull over. I hit the gas and kept driving, because I know now, the accident is never really the accident. The crash is just the invitation, and Old Mill Road is still hungry. But if a cursed tree sounds like nightmare fuel, wait until you hear the screams that echo where no one should be. Story 7. The Screams on the Empty Road. My name is Carlos Rivera, and I used to drive medical transport for rural counties in eastern Montana. It's exactly as lonely as it sounds. 12-hour shifts driving between tiny towns, moving patients from critical access hospitals to larger facilities, or delivering blood and organs for emergency surgeries. You spend most of your time alone on empty highways, nothing but prairie and sky, the occasional ghost town, and your own thoughts. It's the kind of job that makes you value human contact, that makes you notice when something's wrong. April 19th. I'd just finished a transport from Glendive to Miles City, routine, a dialysis patient needing a transfer, and I was heading back empty on Highway 200. It was just past midnight, and the road was utterly deserted. No traffic, no lights from houses or towns. Just my headlights cutting through absolute darkness, illuminating the white line, and nothing else. The radio was playing some late-night call-in show, a host droning on about conspiracy theories. I was half listening, half zoning out when I heard it. A scream, high-pitched, female, terrified. Coming from outside the van, I slammed on the brakes, scanning the roadside. Nothing. Just empty prairie stretching in all directions. I rolled down my window, killed the radio, and listened. Silence. Wind. The ticking of my engine. Then another scream, closer this time. Definitely female, definitely in distress. Coming from somewhere ahead of me, off the right side of the road. I grabbed my flashlight and stepped out. The temperature had dropped, maybe 40 degrees, and the wind was sharp. I called out, "Hello? Do you need help? This is medical transport." The screaming stopped. I stood there, heart pounding, flashlight beams sweeping across the empty land. Nothing moved. No houses, no broken-down cars, no signs of anyone. I was about to get back in the van when I heard it again, but this time it wasn't a scream. It was laughter, female laughter, high and manic, echoing across the prairie from multiple directions at once. The hair on my neck stood up. I backed toward my van, keeping the flashlight moving. The laughter grew louder, and now I could hear words underneath it, too distorted to make out clearly. I got in the van, locked the doors, and hit the gas. In my rearview mirror, I saw nothing, just empty road receding into darkness. But the laughter continued. Inside the van, it was coming from my radio, even though I'd turned it off. The speakers crackled with static and that awful laughter, and beneath it, a voice, "Help us, help us, help us." I punched the radio's power button. Nothing changed. I turned the volume knob down. The sound stayed the same. I reached behind the dash and yanked out the power cable. The radio kept playing. "Help us, help us, help us." If you're new here, subscribe to Untold Fears for nightly stories that make you question every sound on the road. I was doing 80 now, desperate to get back to Miles City, to somewhere with lights and people. The voice from the radio grew more insistent. "Help us. You have to help us. Please." "Who are you?" I shouted at the dashboard. "What do you want?" The static cleared suddenly, and a different voice came through. Male, calm, official. "This is Sheriff William Tate, Rosebud County. Date is July 14th, 1983. We're conducting a search for 3 missing persons: Jennifer Hollis, age 19, Rebecca Tate, age 17, and Mary Stillwater, age 18. Last seen on Highway 200, approximately 10 miles east of Forsyth. If anyone has information." The message repeated, that same official tone, that same date, July 14th, 1983. I grabbed my phone, no signal out here, never is, and kept driving. The message played 3 more times, then dissolved into static. Then screaming again, 3 different voices, overlapping, crying for help. I reached Miles City at 1:30 a.m., pulled into the hospital parking lot, and sat there shaking. The radio had gone silent once I'd hit the city limits. I called the sheriff's department non-emergency line and, feeling like an idiot, asked if they had any record of missing persons from 1983. The dispatcher put me on hold. 5 minutes later, a deputy came on the line. "You said 1983? 3 girls?" "Yeah, Jennifer Hollis, Rebecca Tate, Mary Stillwater." A long pause. "Where'd you hear those names?" It's complicated. What happened to them?" "That's an old case, unsolved. They disappeared while driving Highway 200. Car was found abandoned about 15 miles east of Forsyth. No signs of struggle, no bodies, nothing. Just gone." "What do you mean, gone?" "I mean they vanished. The lead investigator was Sheriff Tate. Rebecca was his daughter. He searched for months, never found anything. Died about 10 years ago, never gave up on the case." I thanked him and hung up. I didn't tell him about the screaming or the radio or any of it. What would I say? That I heard ghosts? That 3 women who'd been missing for 40 years were somehow still on that highway, still screaming for help? I didn't drive Highway 200 for 2 weeks. Took routes that added hours to my shifts, going around. My supervisor noticed, asked if I was okay. I made excuses. Car trouble, stomach issues, anything. But eventually, I had to go back. An emergency transport, critical patient, no alternative routes. It was just after 11 p.m. I was tense, gripping the wheel, watching the odometer, knowing I'd be passing through that same stretch where I'd heard the screaming. Mile marker 89. That's where it started last time. I approached 89, and right on cue, the screaming began. Louder this time, more urgent. 3 voices overlapping. "Help us! Please! We're still here! Don't leave us again!" I pulled over. I don't know why. Every instinct said to keep driving, but something, guilt, compassion, stupidity, made me stop. I got out, leaving the engine running, and walked to the edge of the highway. The prairie stretched out black and endless. And I saw them. 3 figures, maybe 100 yards out, standing together. The moonlight was bright enough to see their outlines. Young women in clothes from decades ago, holding hands. "Hello," I called out. They didn't move, didn't respond, just stood there, watching me. I took a step forward, then another. The closer I got, the more details I could see. They were pale, so pale they almost glowed. Their hair moved in the wind, but their clothes didn't. And their eyes, hollow, dark, bottomless. I stopped about 50 feet away. Are you Jennifer, Rebecca, and Mary?" The one in the middle, taller, dark hair, nodded slowly. "What happened to you?" She opened her mouth, and the scream that came out wasn't human. It was something primal, agonizing, the sound of someone in eternal torment. The other 2 joined in, and the sound was overwhelming, pressing against my skull, making my nose bleed. I turned and ran back to the van. Behind me, I could hear them following, not footsteps, but that screaming getting closer. I reached the van, threw myself inside, and hit the gas, doors still open, tires spinning on asphalt. In the rearview mirror, they were standing in the middle of the highway, watching me go. And then, one by one, they faded, like someone turning down the brightness on a screen until there was nothing left. I made the delivery, then immediately drove to the Rosebud County Sheriff's Department. I walked in at 3 a.m. and told the night deputy everything. He listened without interrupting, then pulled out a file, thick, dusty, labeled Hollis Tate Stillwater, 1983. "You're not the first," he said quietly. "We get reports every few years. Drivers seeing 3 girls on Highway 200, hearing screaming. Some people stop, some don't. But everyone who sees them says the same thing. They're asking for help." "What happened to them?" "We don't know. Best theory is they picked up a hitchhiker who killed them, dumped the bodies somewhere out there." He gestured toward the window, toward the endless prairie. but it's thousands of square miles. Could be anywhere, or they could have been moved out of state. We'll probably never find them. So they're just stuck there, reliving it forever? He closed the file. I don't have an answer for that. I quit the medical transport job a month later, took a position at a hospital in Billings, working inside, no more long drives. But I still have nightmares about those three figures standing in the prairie, screaming. And last week, I was driving to visit family in North Dakota. Took I-94, nowhere near Highway 200. But at a rest stop, I went inside to use the bathroom, and I heard it again. That screaming coming from the drain in the sink. I looked in the mirror, and standing behind me were three pale women in clothes from 1983. I ran out of that rest stop and haven't gone back, because I understand now they're not stuck on Highway 200. They're stuck in the space between life and death, between past and present. And anyone who hears them becomes part of their loop, carrying them forward. I hear them sometimes, late at night, when the house is quiet, when I'm alone. A distant scream, just barely audible. And I know that someday, maybe soon, I'll turn around and they'll be there, waiting, still asking for help I can't give. But perhaps the most terrifying thing on these highways isn't what you can see or hear. It's what you can't see, what follows just out of sight. Story 8. The Shadow Chasing the Car. My name is David Ortega, and I'm a pharmaceutical sales rep covering the Southwest, Arizona, New Mexico, parts of Texas. I drive between 40,000 and 50,000 miles a year, staying in crappy motels, eating truck stop food, living out of my Camry. It's not the life I imagined, but after my wife left and took the kids to California, it's the life I have. The road gives me space to think, or maybe space to avoid thinking. Either way, I've seen every kind of highway, every kind of weather, every kind of driver. I thought I'd seen everything. Then I drove Highway 54 in New Mexico on June 7th. I'd left a client meeting in Alamogordo around 8 p.m., heading north toward Santa Fe. Highway 54 is desolate, cutting through desert and scrubland, towns few and far between, not much traffic. The sun had just set, and the sky was that deep purple blue of desert twilight with the first stars appearing. I'd been driving for about 20 minutes when I noticed something in my rearview mirror. A shadow. Not a car. I would have seen headlights. Just a dark shape on the road behind me, moving fast. At first, I thought it was an optical illusion, some trick of the fading light, but it kept pace with me, maybe 100 yards back. I slowed down from 70 to 60. The shadow slowed down too, maintaining the same distance. I sped up to 80. The shadow accelerated. "What the hell?" I muttered, trying to get a better look. It was dark, formless, like a patch of concentrated night that moved independent of the surrounding darkness, and it was gaining on me. My rational brain said it was nothing, exhaustion, stress, dehydration making me see things. But my lizard brain, the ancient part that knows when a predator is hunting you, was screaming danger. I pushed the Camry to 90. Highway 54 is straight through this section, no traffic, and I kept the pedal down. The shadow kept coming. It was close now, maybe 50 yards, and I could see, or sense, I'm not sure which, that it had shape. Vaguely humanoid, but wrong. Too tall, arms too long, moving in a way that didn't match normal biomechanics. Then my car started to sputter. The engine coughed, power dropping. The dashboard lights flickered. I looked at the fuel gauge, 3/4 full. But the engine was dying, RPMs falling despite my foot on the accelerator. No, no, no. I pounded the dashboard. The car was coasting now, losing speed. 70, 60, 50. In the mirror, the shadow was right behind me, close enough that I could see details. It wasn't just dark, it was absence, like a hole in reality, shaped like something that used to be human. My car rolled to a stop in the middle of the highway. The engine was dead, all lights out. I tried the ignition. Nothing, I grabbed my phone, no signal, and the screen was glitching, lines of static running across it. The shadow was 10 feet from my back bumper, just sitting there, waiting. I locked the doors, useless, I know, against something that wasn't physical, but it was all I could think to do. My breath fogged in front of me. The temperature inside the car had dropped, frost forming on the inside of the windows. The shadow moved. Not walked, moved, gliding forward without legs, getting closer to the car. I could feel it now, a pressure against my chest, like someone pressing down on my sternum. Then I heard the voice, not from outside, from inside my head. Run! It wasn't a suggestion, it was a command, and my body obeyed before my brain caught up. I threw open the door and ran, leaving everything behind, phone, wallet, keys, sprinting into the desert, stumbling over rocks and scrub brush. Behind me I heard, felt, the shadow following. Not footsteps, but a presence, cold and vast, like a wave of absolute zero rolling across the desert. If you're new here, subscribe to Untold Fears for nightly stories that make you question every sound on the road. I ran until my lungs burned and my legs gave out, collapsing behind a cluster of rocks. I twisted around, looking back toward the highway. My car was visible in the starlight, a tiny shape in the distance, and around it, that shadow, circling like a shark. I don't know how long I hid there. Could have been minutes, could have been hours. Time felt broken. Eventually, I saw headlights. Another car on Highway 54, heading north. I stood up, waving my arms, screaming for help. The car pulled over, an older couple, tourists from Iowa. They asked if I was okay, said I looked like I'd seen a ghost. I told them my car broke down, that I needed a ride to the next town. They agreed, and I climbed into their back seat, shaking. As we drove past my Camry, I looked out the window. The shadow was still there, standing next to my car. And as we passed, it turned, I swear to God it turned, and watched us go. The couple dropped me at a gas station in Carrizozo. I called a tow truck, waited 3 hours for it to arrive. When the driver brought my car in, he said it was the weirdest thing. The car started up fine for him, no mechanical issues at all. Probably just vapor lock, he said. I didn't argue. I paid him, got in my car, and drove straight to Santa Fe, avoiding Highway 54. But that wasn't the end of it. 2 weeks later, I was in Tucson, driving at night. Glanced in my rearview mirror, and there it was, the shadow, 50 yards back, following me. I pulled into a well-lit gas station, surrounded by people. The shadow stopped at the edge of the light, just outside the reach of the fluorescent glow. It waited there until I left. It's followed me ever since. Different highways, different states, but it's always there. Sometimes I'll go days without seeing it, and I'll start to think I'm free. Then I'll be driving late at night, and I'll catch a glimpse in the mirror. I've tried everything. Driving only during daylight, it appears as a heat shimmer. Staying in well-lit areas, it waits in the shadows of buildings. I even stopped driving for a month, stayed in one place, worked remotely. But eventually, I had to get back on the road. And the moment I did, there it was. I started researching, found stories online, buried in forums and conspiracy sites. Other drivers talking about being followed by shadows on deserted highways. Most of them are dismissed as pranks or hallucinations. But there are patterns. Highway 54 comes up a lot, so does Highway 50 in Nevada, the loneliest road in America, and Route 93 in Arizona, always desert highways, always at night, and always the same description, a shadow that follows, that drains your car's power, that makes you run. One post stood out. It was from a trucker who'd been followed by a shadow for 6 months. He said he finally figured out what it was, the ghost of someone who died alone on that highway, who walked until they couldn't walk anymore, who lay down in the dark and waited for death. And now they follow the living, drawn to the warmth and light, trying to remember what it felt like to be alive. He said the only way to make it stop was to confront it, to stop running and face it directly. I tried. Last week, I was driving through Arizona on Route 93, and the shadow appeared. I pulled over, got out of my car, and walked toward it. "What do you want?" I shouted. "Why are you following me?" The shadow stopped. For a moment, it seemed to solidify, to take on a more definite shape. I saw the outline of a man, tall, thin, wearing clothes that might have been from the 1950s or 60s. His face was indistinct, but his eyes were voids, dark and hungry. He raised one hand, pointing at me, and I heard that voice again, inside my head. Run. But this time I understood. It wasn't a command. It was a warning, because the shadow wasn't hunting me. It was protecting me from something else. I turned around, looked behind me at the empty desert, and I saw them. Dozens of them, hundreds, shadows of all shapes and sizes, emerging from the darkness, moving toward the highway, toward me. I ran back to my car and drove. In my mirror, I saw the tall shadow standing between me and the horde, holding them back. I don't know what they are. I don't know what they want. But I know that the shadow following me isn't my enemy. It's keeping the others away. And every night when I'm driving, I check my mirror. And every night, there it is. My shadow, my guardian, keeping pace with me, keeping them at bay. I used to be afraid of it. Now I'm afraid of what will happen if it ever leaves. Because the highway is full of things that died there. And most of them are hungry. So if you ever drive Route 19 after midnight, don't stop for anyone waving you down. And if you see a shadow in your rearview mirror, pray it's following you, and not something else. Subscribe to Untold Fears. Because the road is long, the night is dark, and some things never stop hunting.